What's up, everybody? Guy here from Total Geek Live. We're doing another 19XX with the TGL crew. We have Baltimore and Danny and Kaiser and my dog Frodo because he thinks there's cheeseburgers involved with this episode. I don't know, kids. I'm just as surprised as you are.
Cheeseburgers.
So anyway, we're going back to the past with another 1980s themed episode on 19XX. We're talking about those popular computers of the day, Apple II and Commodore 64. So we
and
TI, not the Treasure Island from Las Vegas. Sorry,
Yes.
or the rapper.
or the rapper.
Not
No
him.
rapper, no casinos. It's just TI from Texas Instruments. Or if you're in Texas, they just call it Instruments.
Should have.
Well, they do. I don't know. I don't know, man. I'm here to talk about old computers. Anyway, so let's talk about some of our earliest memories of computers. Baltimore, what are some of your favorite early memories? Actually, we have two sides right now, Commodore and Apple. Which side are you on?
Well, I'm gonna have to scoot to the third side, the TI side,
Well,
only because that's what I actually had.
wild card.
I know.
A new challenger appears.
The Apple II we had at the Catholic school, so I was using that there. And then my friend the Lockwoods, who had almost all of everything, which is awesome, had the Commodore 64. So as I spent most of my weekends over there, I got to play on that system a lot. So kind of a split, and then a shout to the TI side.
Right
Yeah.
on. I will go with that answer. Excellent choice. Danny, how about you?
Well, I had a Apple IIe that was given to me by my Uncle Chris and Aunt Sheila when they upgraded their computer. However, my friends, the Sewell boys, had a Commodore 64. And
You're friends with a bunch of pool boys?
No, Sewell. Sewell, like the Sewell Cadillac and all that kind of stuff.
Okay,
Like,
because it would have been
I
a
don't know if
Harlequin
they're related
romance
to
novel
them.
at that point. Have you been on any covers of books lately?
But I liked the color graphics of the Commodore 64. So anytime after school or on the weekends or whatever, go over there and play the games on there because my Apple IIe just had a green screen. There was no real color. There were some great games, but I kind of geared more towards the Commodore 64 because it just seemed... Yeah, I liked the graphics better. And they had a wider selection of games.
For sure.
So, yep, that's where I stand. I'm kind of... Even though I owned an Apple, I really was more of a fan of the Commodore 64. Yeah, what about you guys?
I'm kind of in the boat. I never owned any computer growing up. I didn't own my first computer until I got my job at Midway and could afford one. But I had very fond experiences playing the Apple II in Mrs. Tico's class. And then in a small cubby hole in a Chinese restaurant, I would hang out and play on an Apple II. I think it was, or was that a Commodore?
Okay.
I forgot so a good friend of mine at the time, Ben, his family owned the local Chinese restaurant in town.
Okay.
Yep.
And so,
Dad's.
yeah, right there. And he had a little kind of hole in the wall in the back that he had a computer set up in. So I'd go after school and hang out with him and play around on his computer, playing like flight sims and stuff. Although I'm remembering like 3 colors. So was that a Commodore or an Apple II, like a higher echelon Apple II? I meant to contact him before the show and I just didn't get a chance to. But it was, I want to swear it was an Apple. So anyway, so 2 apples, but then my uncle had a TI, and I played games like Hunt the Wampus, and
Okay.
then I also created my own games. There was a Choose Your Own Adventure book I found in class, and in the back had some code on how to code your own Choose Your Own Adventure. So I created my own Choose Your Own Adventure on the TI using that code, and then from that, I made my own. I got into the back end of some games and changed their code, so I made my own like first person kind of corridor quest.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty cool. So I might be leaning towards TI because that was kind of my first foray into some game development. Though I took Apple II classes at the school and learned how to animate and move pixels around and stuff too. Man, I come back to me and I'll have chosen a side.
All right. Wait that long. Well, Guy?
Well, I owned an abacus because I love the clackety clack of those little beads. Good times. I am the oldest of the group, so it's not that far. But actually, I know everyone's talking about Apple IIe. My dad, in 1984, got the family an Apple IIc, which was a smaller, more compact version of the Apple IIe. Think of it like as the DS Lite of the Apple II family. One of the cool things, and I'll show this to you, it actually had a handle. And yes, this still works. It still works very well. Listen to that little clacky.
So
brings back computer science memories.
Oh yes.
Does the C stand for carry? The Apple II
carry. Yeah.
It stands for Cleveland.
Living.
It stands for Cleveland, y'all. But no, it's like I remember getting that, and it was like at perfect timing because I read all the old video game magazines at the time, and they were talking about for computers only, Ghostbusters was coming out. And of course, I lost my ever freaking mind. I think I pushed my sister out of the way to show my dad. I was like, "Get out of the way! I gotta show Dad!" And that sounds like a classic me move. But I definitely stayed for definitely in for Ghostbusters, but I at the end stayed for Oregon Trail. And of course, games, and this is another thing. They were discs back in the day, floppy disks.
Yeah,
yes,
true floppy.
Floppy.
He printed the save icon.
Yes. What was that?
He 3D printed the save icon.
Right.
Children, no children, no.
Go back to bed. It's past your bedtime.
Yeah. Go to sleep. Anyway, my 2 favorite memories, because my friend Aaron, I would go over to his house because he was the only other person I knew who had an Apple IIc, and like we'd sit there, and it was really easy to share games on that if you had a hole punch and the will to do so. And
a hole punch.
A hole punch, because if you notice on this, they have like these little tiny things, and if you got a hole punch, you can make a one-sided disc a two-sided disc. And if you knew how to stop an Apple game at the right time, you could load it up and put it on another disc. Not that such things ever happen. So we expanded our library, and we also spent a lot of time learning BASIC, which was one of the primary computer languages for it. One of my greatest accomplishments when I should have been doing, classwork is I turned a Civil War simulator into a yogurt store hut game. So yeah, it was all about Civil War, but I changed all the programming language, so it was Civil War. The sprinkles would still kill you because I substituted that for bullets. I mean, the yogurt, the yogurt industry in the 1980s was brutal. I don't know what to tell you, but you could buy yogurt instead of sending out troops, but you could still die from yogurt. So
what's in that yogurt?
Oh man, yogurt fun. But I think one of my fondest memories of the Apple IIc days was Leisure Suit Larry in the Land of the Lounge Lizards.
Yes.
My God, yeah.
Oh my god, that was my first adult game. You know, and I was playing Atari and Nintendo. That came out, and Aaron had that, and we'd play that, and it's like had a thing where you had to answer like a series of questions to prove you're over 18.
Right.
There was two ways: either being really smart in World Matters, or a simple cheat code, which you could surpass the whole Q&A thing. So that was interesting because it understood all the dirty words that we knew, and it was like, oh my god, it feels me, it's great. It reads all my dirty thoughts. So,
Wow.
Well, he was such a great character, anyways. He had his little suit on, and just the gameplay was a lot of fun. It was, I remember it was kind of a point click, kind of go through adventure thing, and I even remember the censored part when it would come up
over the sex.
Yep.
Yeah, because
cover up all those naughty bits.
Oh yes, because he was
literal bits.
Yeah.
He was in the town of Lost Wages. He's 40 years old, and he finally had to have sex and get rid of his virginity. So that was like the whole quest to find like
this virginity.
So yeah, that's what I did when I was 11. So it kind of explains a lot.
So when you were 11, you pretended you were a 40-year-old man trying to lose his virginity.
In retrospect, that doesn't sound right at all.
No.
Moving on to other games. So what were some of your favorite games on the computer, like in school or even at home when you were?
Well, for school, it was always Oregon Trail.
Oregon Trail.
Until you died of cholera.
Or dysentery.
Yeah.
I usually died of dysentery.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have been dysentery.
What was the game? Was it Zork that, like, you open the mailbox to find the key and you had to type in the commands, like,
yes.
go west?
It was Zork.
And
they
go into the castle.
They made like 5 or 6 of those things. But yeah, it was a text-based...
with like rudimentary graphics on the screen, kind of showing you the location.
I think that game was where I was introduced to the Balrog, which was like the toughest creature to fight in that game. And he had a really scary looking face that they, ASCII, using ASCII text, made it the Balrog. He was so hard to beat. So hard to beat. But yeah,
I don't even think I got that far because time in class is very limited to play on them, and everybody wanted to play it.
Yeah.
Well, on the Commodore 64, one of my favorite games was Bruce Lee, and you were, it's so simple graphics, but yellow shirt, black pants, and you're going around being an awesome ninja, and you're fighting ninjas, and you're climbing walls, and just the graphics, even for it being an 8-bit game, it looks so cool. And the gameplay was just a lot of fun. Another fun game was Archon.
I loved Archon.
Oh, yes.
So it was taking the idea of chess, but then adding that whole battle element where, each piece... Time. Yeah, real time, and each piece had its own kind of powers and all that. God, I loved that game. So cool.
I totally forgot about Archon. That was a great game back in the day. I played a lot of flight simulators over at the Super Bowl Chinese restaurant.
Perfect place for it.
Yeah. I'd steal a fried donut and go in there.
I loved all the like the Olympics games, Summer Olympics, the Winter Olympics.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Epic. Those over at the Lockwoods. And then I think there was I feel like there was like a Rampage type game on the Commodore, or some sort of like monstery battle-y game.
Okay.
There
might have been. I didn't play it.
I remember there was a game that was also from Epix, which made California games, summer games. It was called Movie Monster Game, and it was like you could pick like a bunch of different monsters and either escape from town or tear up town or eat people, and it was super cool. I don't know if it was that, but you could just go around as like a collection of different monsters and just like destroy, and it was awesome.
Right on. Commodore 64 also had Jumpman, which was very, very popular when it came out. And you're this little guy, and you're really a man who jumps, and so hence the Jumpman title. But I know a lot of people that played that game, a lot of fun.
Well, id Software got their start making their Mario clone, Commander Keen, on the Commodore 64.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they were none of the games were like full side scrollers, and then they saw Super Mario, and no one had replicated that yet. They figured out how to do a full side scrolling game, so they sat around and made one, and it became Commander Keen.
Oh wow!
Wow,
that's cool.
And then they made Doom.
Yeah, right.
I just seeing the guy's shirt there.
Oh yeah.
Oh, reminded
actually,
you.
This is Evil Dead Doom. Boom.
Oh, boom.
Boom.
Yeah.
Lucasfilm made a great game on the Commodore 64. Zach McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders. It's kind of a takeoff of the gameplay style was much like Maniac Mansion, where you're kind of going through, clicking through, and exploring and doing all. There's command based, but there's going around and checking out all different kinds of things. It was a pretty fun game.
Nice.
Yeah.
I just like the name.
I don't know when we got the TI, because I don't know, for some reason all the memories kind of just like blur together. I just remember we didn't have it, and then we did. I had all the kind of knockoff games. So like instead of Pac-Man, you had Munchman.
Right.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Instead of like the Space Invader, you had Parsec, and instead of the Galaga, you had to get the TI Invader. So we had those games. My sister and I would play that a lot, and that was kind of like our game system until whenever we finally were able to get the Nintendo. Whenever that was. But yeah, so we played those all the time.
Because copyrights were so loose back then. You wanted to make a Pac-Man clone, just go ahead and do it. And like everybody did, or Space Invaders or whatever.
Yep.
I remember one of my favorite things about like the Apple II was just that they had a lot of educational games, but they were actually really fun. They had Oregon Trail, and then they had Odell Lake. Do you remember that, where you're like the fish? And then you had to size up if you could eat the other fish or not.
Oh my god, I completely forgot about that. I love that.
Did you have to math in that?
No, it was like a survival nature game, and it's like sometimes an otter would come and eat your fish, and like the best fish was like a Mackinaw trout, because the weird stuff I remember. But actually there's an image of it in the rotation of the screens. If you see some fish, you'll probably see it in there. There was also Number Munchers, which was a math game.
Yeah, see, I wasn't. No, don't you bring math into my games.
But it's like if you got so far, you get like little cartoons, kind of like how they do with Pac-Man intermissions.
Right.
And I'm trying to think what else they had. Because they had a bunch of like mystery style games that were supposed to help you. Like they had Snooper Troops that was supposed to help you kind of like learn how to deductive reasoning and think. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That was another big one. She was all over the place. Earth, time. She got around. Because that was definitely another big one. But also, because I played a lot of like the text adventure games, like the Go West thing, because they had like Swiss Family Robinson, and actually I have something from this. This is from one, The Hobbit.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I still have the box, and it was really cool because it was like for all this floppy disk, you could open it up. And like it actually came with a novelization of the book, You know, they gave you like a copy of the book so you could kind of defer to it. And it just opens up, and it's like such a big deal. But that's the way computer packaging was. It would like make it seem so much more epic than, you know, obviously it's primitive by today's standards, but it was so cool back then.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I had to hold those giant discs, and as the bigger the games got, like you get in the King's Quest and stuff, you know, it'd have like 9 to 12 discs to.
That's insane.
Yeah. King's Quest 4 was 8 discs.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because we actually did have a color monitor for the Apple IIc, and you know, you get like a decent color palette on most games, but like Sierra, whenever they did like their King's Quest, Space Quest, Leisure Suit Larry, I mean, they had like a full color spectrum. It was really nice in comparison to everything else.
Mm-hmm.
They were like the premier developer. But yeah, it's just, there were a lot of really fun games on it, and sometimes I could even go and make my own because I knew BASIC and could make some fun stuff or draw picture or create pictures and things like that.
Yeah, I remember subscribing to a Computing World magazine or something like that. I think that was the name of it or whatever, and not really realizing that the code in there, because they would have at the very back of it, they would have programs that you could just already pre-made, and you just type them in and compile them and all that. Well, that was for BASIC, and I had my Apple IIe didn't do that. I guess, or maybe it was a different programming language, but I would sit there and type it in anyways, and just because I wanted to see, you know, if it would work or whatever, and I didn't really know what I was doing, but I thought I did, so it felt cool. It felt like I was hacking or whatever. But I thought it was interesting that the Apple systems came with a monitor, whereas the Commodore 64, well, you could plug it into a TV. You didn't necessarily, it sometimes didn't come with a monitor or something like that.
Yeah.
I just thought that was interesting for the differentiating the product.
Yeah. Because I remember those little codes like that, like the little mini programs they give like in magazines and things like that. I remember one, it was something about like, it was as simple as like launching a rocket or something, except like I did something wrong in the coding. So there's like this rocket, and then right back, it's like sticking out like way over there. And I was like going crazy because I was trying to figure out, because I wanted like this rocket to like go up because it had like USA in the middle of it. It was like all this fine typing, and I like derped like the centerpiece. So
yeah, I remember trying to, it's like 6th or 7th or 8th grade or whatever in Catholic school, and we had to try to do those kind of computer things. And I just had no patience for it. It was not what I wanted to be doing. And okay, so I made something go like this. That's all I could do? Okay, I'm done with this. They kept on making us do it more and more. And like, like you're just talking about, like, you would make something and then you would suddenly, you know, mistake something else, and it would be like all weirded out. And I'm like, she would say, "Why didn't you fix it?" I was like, "Well, I didn't care."
Right. And that's how you became the world-renowned programmer you are today. Oh, wait. That's not what you are.
Nope. Yeah.
Oh God, I remember like Apple also came with like a series of disks that you could use it for like a productivity tool or write spreadsheets or have like real primitive databases. I think like the family had a program where we could keep a copy of all our VHS tapes on like a database and things like that. And I think one of the games that actually came with it is Lemonade Stand. Do you remember that?
Mm-mm.
Where you had to like sell lemonade, like how many cups of sugar and how many cups, and like the weather would change. There'd be like regular sunny day, super hot day, rain, thunderstorms, snow. I try to like sell people like $10,000 glasses of lemonade, and one person bought it. I went bankrupt. Like, oh my God, I didn't care. Someone bought my expensive lemonade, and I think I used like 1 cup of sugar, and I was a boss that day.
How could you go bankrupt if you made $10,000 with 1 cup?
'Cause apparently the populace didn't trust me anymore when I had to lower prices and they wouldn't buy from me anymore.
But you made $10,000 as a lemonade stand owner. No one ever makes that much money. You might make $10, $15.
Right.
You won the game that day.
I bought all the packs of Garbage Pail Kids that day.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Those were. Yeah. I enjoyed playing the TI because that's all I had when I was able to at the house. But I love being able to play the Commodore 64. I love the games because at least you had like a large kind of library of games, and the Lockwoods had so many games that it was just whatever you want. You like thumb through it and put it in.
Right.
And it was a lot more fun. And then just at the school, they just had the Apple, which was supposed to be the learning computers, and you were supposed to be learning, not playing Oregon Trail.
Right.
But we did anyway.
Oh,
But you were learning about trails and
Right.
how to get to Oregon.
In Oregon.
in trails.
In trails.
In Trails, wrong kind of game, unless I got my hands on it. So that could have changed with a little bit of typing. But Commodore lasted a long time. It came out in 1982 and finally called it quits in 94.
Yeah, which
Wow.
is really
So-
surprising. You would think that after the Nintendo system came out that would have been it for the C64.
And it's funny you say that because the Nintendo Wii, like back in 2009, they had like a super limited number of Commodore 64 games on their virtual console.
Oh, wow.
So it was like 12 games and then they mysteriously disappeared because it seems like someone is always buying the rights to the Commodore name and license, trying to bring it back, and then something happens and then it goes away. Although I think it was you, never mind, that sent me something about how they're trying to do like the Nintendo minis. They're doing like a Commodore 64 mini. So they're
Yes.
trying to bring it back yet again.
Yep, they're going to bring it back. Yeah, the C64 Mini, it's going to have, I think, 60 games or a certain amount of games. I forget how many preloaded on there. It's going to retail for, I think, $70. And I don't know if it's coming out later this year or if it's going to be early next year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw an article about that. Crazy,
So was the
yeah.
Commodore 64 just games, or did they actually have like personal computer things you could do on
Oh,
it?
they had word processor and all that
Did-
kind of stuff too. Yeah.
Used it, so I never.
Yep. Nope.
Yeah.
Same here. I didn't either, but I knew that it was there because the family that I played on, they had that kind of stuff. They were, they would write papers and all that stuff with it. So.
Yeah, it's still actually used today. I mean, a lot of people still make games for the Commodore 64, and a lot of people use it as a music player, which is really rare. Like I've seen a chiptune concerts where they'll play use like the Commodore 64 as one of their instruments because of the music program in it. So
Is that what the Revenge of the Nerds did?
I don't know. I haven't seen Revenge of the Nerds. No, it wouldn't surprise me though. I mean, clap your hands, everybody, and everybody clap your hands. It's like that's like such a great statement. It just rounds around. It's like,
Yep.
drink your glass, everybody, and everybody glass your drink. Or what did I do? Never mind. But it's not a science, but it could be. But yeah, there were so many games that were really cool for like these systems in general. And what's funny is like because they did like official versions of arcade games, because I do like still have a copy of Pac-Man for the Apple IIc, but then they had stuff like Munchman, and I mean you'd have like an official version maybe, and then like a crap ton of clones, and then like you'd always, and then like as I said, I would sit there and trade games back and forth with my friends, and like I'd just plow through blank discs, and I'd find you have games, and we just trade stuff, and it was like I was like a fiend back in the day. But
I need that floppy.
don't copy that floppy. They probably made that video for me. But it's funny because so many of those games have fallen into abandonware. There's no way to find them again. They're not on Steam or Good Old Games or even really just relevant anymore. I did find a virtual Apple II emulator that you can find online. You can actually play pretty decent representations of these games, but I mean, they are part of video game history, and
Right.
they're lost forever for the most part. And like, I mean, a couple people like me who actually has a functioning Apple and a couple games left. It's the only way to get the source code for these games and preserve them because they're kind of gone at this point. Other than memory and stuff like this.
Archive.org has a software section, and people are putting archiving some of the older stuff on there as well.
That's good.
It needs to be preserved because, it's digital. It's gone.
And especially physical media. I mean, like it has this little magnetic tape. All you could do is run a magnet over this, and it'd be done.
Yes.
Or I could get it wet, or it could just erode over time. I mean, this thing's like 1985. It's freaking old. It's old, and it may not last forever. I may put it in my little system one day and turn it on. It might not work. The system might not even work. So that's just a concern about the loss of some of this old stuff because, if it doesn't make money, then they don't really care about preserving it.
Right. But you're seeing, in this heyday where...
Resurgence.
Yeah, there's a resurgence and a love for this stuff, and people are having stronger efforts to preserve. A buddy of mine, Scott Patterson, is a historian, and he's daily going out, collecting, archiving, trying to gather all this stuff, anything and everything game related. And, he's made it his life's work. And, we need more people like him, and not just the owning of it, but like the history of it,
Right.
Who made it, when did it come out, kind of just debunking some like common, popular myths and stuff. I mean, I'm glad there are people out there like Scott doing this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it takes the dedication, it takes money and loving and understanding family is like, what are you doing?
Hoping the parents don't throw it out one day. Oh, you weren't using them anymore, and it's like that's not the point. And that's what happened to my first C.
Right.
Dad decided to get rid of it, and I was like traumatized. I was like, no. All my ill-gotten gains.
Yeah.
But at least I could have archived them for something. So.
Yeah.
You mean to just sit around and play
Mario Brothers or Pac-Man?
Yeah.
On Apple IIc. It was a Wild West frontier, and I think that's what I loved about classic video game on like this. It's like an 11-year-old kid could go and make their own game on it and be functional, and it may not make the most sense, but you could do it.
Yeah. That's with the TI, I just fell in love with going in there and messing with the code. And once I saw some code and kind of understood what it was doing, I was like, well, what happens if I change it to this? And what if I add this, and I wish I'd have stuck with that and got into programming, but I never really did. I've always stuck more on the art and production side. But I would love to, I have such fond memories. So, we should probably wrap it up here. So, what's your system? You're on a desert island. You have 2 outlets, one for your monitor, one for your system.
Apple IIc.
Commodore 64.
I'm going to go with my nostalgia and do a TI.
I'll probably go with the Apple II just because it probably had more games than the TI that I'd want to play. Otherwise, I'd probably have the TI as well.
Wait, this deserted island has electricity? Yes.
Yes, but only 2 outlets.
It's powered by coconuts.
And no Wi-Fi.
Lovely bunch of coconuts.
Well, that would be the end of our episode talking about classic computers of the 80s. If you have any memories of your own about classic games, and of your own floppy disk hijinks, or I know there's a couple people out there who have programmed a couple of those old games on these old systems. Certainly drop some memories off in the comments, and of course share and like and create, because we're always having fun going back, visiting our childhood, and hopefully by proxy we're visiting your childhood too. So from the gang at TGL, it's all geek to us. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
And remember to pronounce it floppy disks.
Don't copy that floppy, because I'm a hypocrite.
Not anymore.
Don't copy that floppy, so let me break this down for you. No comments and the
The gnarly beard maybe no.
Right.
But you got to get gnarly beards.
Yeah.
Beards.
That's the follow-up to Angry Birds and Gnarly Beards. Totally tubular facial hair, bro.
Gnarly.
It's like a merkin for your face.
Dude, do you beard, bro? Bro,
You even
I totally
beard, bro.
beard, bro.
Bruh.
Dude,
Dude.
bro,
Bruh.
Ah,
Bruh.
beard. Do you beard? I beard, dude.
That's a gnarly beard, bro. Even beard.